Hey everyone, it's Christine Gritmon here with Social. I do this show every week where I bring on smart friends to talk about different topics relating to social media, digital marketing, business, all that stuff. And this month has been Mental Health Month, and we're talking about how that has an impact on, and how social media has an impact on that in particular, because social media can, of course, be a mixed blessing with all that connectivity. And I have here a return guest, Demian Ross, who is a full-time liver on the road and video creator. Let's talk about that. Introduce yourself, Demian. Tell us what your deal is.
Yeah, so I've been on the road full-time for about 3 years now, living in a 42-foot fifth wheel, traveling the country. I've lived in 42 states so far in the last 3 years. Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. I have a little fun side project I'm doing. It's just a challenge to myself, where I try to record a video every day. I have done so for 795 days, I believe, in a row. Yeah. I mean, and nothing like where you get into like drone footage and major edits. It's really talking head. It's like what you're looking at right now, to an extent, to most part. And I launched a business in like the end of 2019 about traveling, which is awesome, right before 2020. And actually, it's actually been really good for me, believe it or not. You would think, not to say that I'm recession or economic proof, but I believe this lifestyle kind of thrives in and around this type of pandemic or dynamic that we're dealing with. So it's kind of interesting. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, that is an interesting thought. I mean, talk about flexibility.
Yeah, and you're seeing it. I mean, even just Twitter and Facebook just announced recently that they're going full-time home, and I've been a big advocate for it. I've never understood. I understand retail, that you have to have employees come in. You know, I mean, I get that they're hospitality. The maids can't do this virtually from home. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's just
there are certain high-touch industries that are never going to not be.
But the idea of driving an hour and a half every day to a cubicle to answer phones and do tech service to then leave and drive home for an hour and a half, I've just never understood it. I've never gotten it. Never, even as a business owner, why would I want that office space? You know, blah, blah, blah. But so it's cool that we're seeing a lot of this transition in a lot of the big tech companies, because I think a lot of people don't realize big tech companies, you're living in big, expensive areas, and now they're saying you can go home. Can you leave? I'd be bouncing too. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, my goodness, if you can work in Silicon Valley and like have the Silicon Valley salary, but be living in the middle of Oklahoma.
Right.
I mean,
you just got a 700% raise.
That is pretty amazing. And I wonder how that's actually going to impact cost of living in different areas of the country now that you mention it, because the fact is salary and cost of living, they weren't ever exactly commensurate. I mean, I live right by New York City, and Lord, but it's, you know, there was some degree of relationship there, and now they're really that might be really shifting up the whole real estate market, like, way of measuring that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think too, then you would just really open your pool for quality employees. If you don't need to have them in the office where you can stare at them while they're working, I think you'll end up with some amazing people. You know, actually, fun fact, you actually end up with people that work more.
Yeah.
When they're remote. It's weird. You would think they would work less, but most people work more. They're so self-conscious of it. And they're just not BSing for the 2.5 hours at work that you normally BS. You know, you don't have people in your ear. Anyways, it's just all that kind of stuff. It's great. It's great that it's happening. I mean, I hate why it's happening, but it's great that it is happening. And we're going to see this shift. And we'll just see that we don't need all these spaces and places for offices. We just don't.
I love that. And you were really ahead of the curve on that. So you have been not traveling. You're not traveling. You are living full time in a variety of places. Okay.
I say that I'm not camping. People will say, because I live in an RV, they're like, oh, you camp for a living. I'm like, no, I don't. I don't need a 60-inch plasma that goes up and down behind my fireplace to go camping. Yeah. This is my condo on wheels.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's more that you're saying you're not visiting these places. You are living in them for periods of time.
Yeah. I really do feel like, you know, and also too, I stay away from big cities. Mm-hmm. Like most of the places, I'll say right now I'm in Columbus, and people are like, oh, you're in Columbus, Ohio. No, I'm in Columbus, Texas. Never heard of it. Yeah, that's where I'm at. It is. It really is the point where, you know, I mean, even before you were supposed to stay 6 feet away from people, that was no problem for me, because I'm just not in these areas. You know, my entire life, I couldn't stay 6 foot away from someone living in Los Angeles. It was virtually impossible. So yeah, I mean, a little bit ahead of the curve, but man, people. I mean, Nikki was outside, my roommate, for those of you listening, was outside talking to a lady that's been full-timing for 27 years.
Wow.
And she's solo. And she's, you know, maybe a good, I don't know, maybe in her 60s.
That's
And so she's
amazing.
been doing, and we're thinking about 27 years ago. There's no internet. Like, how are you even doing? There's no smartphones. How are you doing this? It's crazy when you think
Like
about
off the grid.
off the grid in so many ways,
Now,
which is great.
Now, to that end, you have not, from the very beginning, you have not really been off the grid, because from the very beginning of your full-time road life in 2017, you have been connecting every single day with the outside world. And I would just like to, first of all, back up and hear about the origins of that, when you decided to kind of do this full-time, and how you decided to have daily videos be a part of that, and then sort of how things have evolved in the nearly 800 days since then. So take us back to 2017.
Well, real quick, I'll go back to 2016. I'm literally sitting around like watching Fixer Upper, and I say out loud that I want to move to Texas. Nikki, my roommate, says, I want to move to Texas too. And literally that was the plan. It was like, oh, this is kind of cool because we don't know where to go. And, you know, just from an economics, I'll go there. I already know someone. Two, it's so much cheaper to go with someone else. So it was just like, that was it. We don't know how the RV came into play. Neither one of us can really sit down. We just know that we ended up at an RV show in October of 2016, and we'd bought a rig in late April of 2017, and we left June 1. I mean, literally, my son graduated high school like I think the 27th of May, and I was like, I'm out. I'm leaving this weekend. You might not go. You're not going away to college,
I'm free.
but that's going exactly.
So to clarify, you're in a full rig. You're not in like something that's trailing behind a truck. Your whole vehicle is the home.
I'm actually in a vehicle pulled by a truck, so I'm in a fifth wheel. So yeah, so there's fifth wheel, there's travel trailer, there's Class A's, B's, and C's. So what you probably see on the road the most is a fifth wheel is it actually connects inside of the bed of the truck. There's a hitch in the bed. A little bit of the weight is on the truck bed. The average people kind of know the bumper pole where it connects to the little ball on the bumper. That's a travel trailer. Class A is the big ones that you see that look like buses that people drive around. Class C is kind of what you rent. And when you see people renting, they have a little bunk above, like where the people drive. And then Class B is kind of the van life setup. It's a little bit bigger than a van, a little bit smaller than a Class C. So we are in a fifth wheel. It's 42 feet long. It's 8.5 feet wide. Has 5 slides. I'm 6'6". I can stand up. It has a step-up living room and a step-up bedroom. I can stand up everywhere. The kitchen's almost 10 feet tall, basically. So I don't, and it's nicer.
It's bigger than some houses in terms of the vertical space.
Oh, it is. And it's probably nicer than at least my last 3 homes before I left. I mean, at one time I had a nice place, but this is legit. And so for me, I think when people hear it and then when people see it, they're like, wait, that's what those things look like now? And I'm like, yeah, they're pretty amazing. It really is a condo on wheels. I mean, that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the starting this and the decision to keep sharing that journey with the outside world, like on a daily basis, because that was a strong decision.
Well, I started the road in March of 2018, the video series. So I had been on the road almost a year, and I was one of those guys that was like, I'm going to vlog the lifestyle. But who I was working for at the time, anytime I put out any kind of content, there was some sort of question about it, or, you know, like, why are you trying to get known? Which is really fucking hysterical right now.
Yes, it is.
But so for me, it was like, that's what was coming back at me. So I kind of stayed away from it. That was part of it. Part of it was just me being lazy. I don't want to put it all on the fact that, you know, like I felt my work was weird about it. So then I was like, why can't I be consistent in this? You know, why do I'm always doing like 5 videos and then I drop off? And so I just came up with, I want to try to do 300 videos in a year. I gave myself 65 days that if I couldn't get internet or if I was sick or anything like that, and I called it Road to 300. And within 300 days, I did 300 videos. And I was like, wow, I'm going to keep going. And so then I announced that I'm going to do, you know, Road to 1,000. And
I was there for the 200th video. The 200th video, I think, happened at Social Media Day 100?
Day 100.
Okay, I was there for 100, and that was at Social Media Day Denver.
Yeah.
And I think even then, you were saying that you were inclined to maybe bump it up to 365 or like something. You were already thinking a little bigger at that point.
Yeah, once I hit 100 in a row, and honestly, that's kind of the thing I talk to people. I feel like that's a really good sweet spot to get yourself going. I know people talk about doing it for 30 days. I think anything you do consistently for like 3 months, it really becomes habit. This thing is just habit. Nothing's getting in the way. I've been sick. I've dealt with all kinds of emotional problems, whatever you want to say. I've had every excuse in the book not to publish a video on a day. And granted, some have been published at 11:58 Pacific time, which is still technically the day, and they go out. But every day there's been a video. And I have gotten, like today I haven't published today's video. I haven't shot today's video. And so it's 11, Central Time, my time, noon Eastern. I haven't put it up yet. I haven't even thought about what I'm going to talk about today. But there are days where I get like 3 or 4 days ahead, and I'll shoot a bunch, and then I don't have to worry about it. I could take a little break. But for the most part, I'd say about 85% are day of. And it really was just a consistency challenge. That's all it is. And once I started figuring out that, man, you can really build relationships through this. Not that everyone's going to watch every single one. And, I don't have a ton of subscribers. That's always seems to be the first question when I say I'm doing a video. How many subscribers do you have? And it just reminds me of the 80s, like, what kind of car do you drive?
Yeah.
It's
not about that metric.
Yeah, and it's also funny. I mean, I've seen all these bots now that have these channels that have 500,000 subscribers and they have no videos. It's just a bot that's commenting and liking, and so it gets subscribers. So I'm like, what does it really matter? Even when I look at someone now with 500,000 subscribers, I'm like, but are they really subscribers, or is it just, bots? So I don't really care about the numbers. Even my daily views aren't that big of a deal, but it's been such a hodgepodge. It's not a way to really build a channel on YouTube anyways. I mean, this is really for consistency. And it's one of those things that when you do consistent, people always want to ask or measure it. And if I told someone, hey, I'm doing, 10 sit-ups a day for 1,000 days, no one would be like, well, lift your shirt. Let's see what you've done. You know what I mean? They'd just be like, that's cool. Like, do your thing. So for me, it's just purely consistency. I am going to make a pivot where I'm going to get very specific in what I'm talking about for basically at least 100 days, if not for the rest of the series, starting on day 800. And just keep it more in and around what I'm doing for work now and build it through those relationships. A lot of it had to do with like social and marketing and business. And I'm really trying to get away from that. There's enough people in that space. And I want to move into the space where I'm working more anyways. So it just makes more sense.
So I'd like to talk about that journey. So when we won't get specific about it, but when you started this journey, you were full-time employed, or, you were employed by a company and you were able to just do it from the road. And then there was a shift there, but there have also been a lot of other shifts in your life that have happened while you've been on the road, because you're, a human living a human life still. The fact that you're on the road doesn't mean you're on vacation. Your life is happening. So you have been really open with sharing that. To your point about some days you really just don't feel like coming on, but you do anyway. You've really, it's almost like a diary in a lot of ways. It's been very interesting. So I'd like to talk about kind of how you make those decisions about what to share and what not to share, and sort of the experience you've had as a result of those decisions.
Yeah, so for me, it's really, there are times where I have like little notes and it'll just be a theme, and I have this like, I'll just go through it and let me grab one and I can give you kind of an idea. But a lot of times it really is, I just press the button and whatever comes out, comes out. So
like Fanzo, press the damn button.
Right. So I have a note that says, are you the bird or are you the cage? Like, that's just the note. Like, somewhere I saw that and I thought, that's really interesting. I don't have an actual subject. That's just the subject matter. I have no content beyond me saying that and be able to say, like, you really decide if you're free and you can go, if you want to stick and be here, maybe is what I'll talk about. So I just write little notes like that. There was a video, it was like day 118, where I started talking about something and it just pivoted. And I felt like, you know what, why don't I share this? And I went pretty deep into something that just happened in my past in 2016, basically went homeless. And it was just a really bad time in my life, and talked about it. And it really kind of went on fire for a little while. It like got picked up and got retweeted, reshared. And I could see immediately, I'm like, oh, this is why people do this. This is why people really like being the victim, or really like being down and out, because man, it really does. If it bleeds, it leads. Like, people just love, you see a 6'6" guy with a giant beard and tats crying in a video, you're like, hey, we got to talk about this. So I think it's really good to be open, especially about the lows. And on my podcast, I will ask my guests, tell me a high in this lifestyle and a low in this lifestyle, because all we do really in social media for the most part is we share the highs.
Yeah,
we really do. It's very rare. And even in this lifestyle, like, we will show when we have a tire blowout. When we lived in a bricks and sticks, we didn't really take a picture of the toilet overflowing.
No.
You know what I mean? So it's weird that even our lows are kind of funky in this lifestyle. So for me, it's always been, I don't want to fake it. If I'm sad and upset, I want to talk about something sad or being upset. If I'm happy and good, I want to talk about happy and being good. Now, there was a period where a lot of it was just sad and upset. Like I couldn't get out of that like hole. And then finally one day I was just like, fuck it. I can't keep talking about sad and upset all the time because that's not my life. But there was a little bit of, I get a lot of attention. I'm sad and depressed as opposed to when you're happy. And I could see that. I could see that starting to fall in. I'm like, I don't want to be that guy where it's like I'm doing this for the ratings.
Yeah,
in a way.
there's a fine line between honesty and an angle. Yeah,
at some point I say this with all, like, I'm really careful when I say this. At some point, you just can't be the victim anymore. Mm-hmm. You just can't, and I know there are things where it's really hard to walk away from when you're victimized, and I get it. Like, there's things that it takes forever. But the things I was dealing with, I just didn't need to be down and out about it. It's over, it's done with, you got to move on. And, the biggest hit for me was the work. I really, when you're working with people that you feel like you love and they love you back, and it's, in a 45-day cycle, it goes from, we want you to help really lead this company to you no longer work here anymore. And I was just like, I still am like, what the hell? Like, my roommates always tell me, Jesus, get over it. You know what I mean? Like yeah. Straight up, like let them do their thing. That's cool. They didn't get, like, whatever it is that I was doing for them, they're not getting more since I've been gone. That's on them. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It wasn't a good decision to let me go, obviously, economically, emotionally, financially, spiritually, anything. So letting it go has been really good. And I'm trying, I'm just like, and then moving forward with my own thing, because I think that's the one thing I really got out of 2018. I think that was the third time that's happened, where, like, straight up felt these people were family that just then said, hey, we're making a pivot, we're making a change, and our pivot and our change doesn't include you. And I just couldn't imagine doing that as a single dad with 4 kids. It's kind of like, hey, you know what? We're gonna move, but 2 of you aren't moving with us. You know what I mean? Like, that would be weird to say that to the kids, right? Where it's just like, we're making some changes here. We love you and we care about you, and we've said we loved and care about, but really we don't. And so I just needed to control my own thing, and I knew instantly that's where I was going.
Now, during that time, so a lot of things were happening in your life at that time. I feel like, in fact, I recently rewatched some of the videos from that time period. There was a day when you popped on, and you were just like, I don't know if I can keep doing these. I'm just not feeling okay. And the fact is, first of all, you shared the fact that you got laid off. You shared a lot of what you were going through. So how did you but at the same time, you didn't, like, bleed all over the camera. You didn't say, here's the exact specifics of my situation, but you didn't avoid it either. So, like, how did you make the decision of that level of nuance, and why, in terms of figuring out what you would say, what you wouldn't say? I feel like what you did say was so much more than a lot of people would feel comfortable doing, which was good.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you're in a cult, I don't know if that's the phrase I really want to use.
No, but I understand completely.
Yeah, so let's say you're in a cult, right? And
I'm familiar with the cult.
you got to be careful what you say, because there are people that are just still drinking the Kool-Aid in a way. And ultimately, everyone's human, and everyone's going to have a position. And I wasn't anyone that was asking someone to pick sides. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, this is the facts. This is what happened to me. Whether I was a shitty employee or I was a great employee, you just don't do what got done to me. You know what I mean? And so for me, I wanted to talk about it, but not like come off the gloves and go at it in a way that it could really hurt the brand. But I needed people to understand that it just wasn't right either, in a way. So I just talked about all of that. And, I think ultimately it was good therapy in a way, just not, because everyone wants to DM it. And I'm like, I don't want to tell these stories individually. I'd rather just put it out. And if someone asked me and say, hey, look, go watch this day, I kind of talk about it a lot. And that just felt really good to get it out.
It kind of saved the emotional energy to a degree to not have to tell the story over and over, to instead be brave and take that leap of saying, I'm going to tell my story in a more public way, but it will save me some personal energy, maybe.
Yeah, and it's also about being transparent and honest. If people know that this is going on in your life and you're not talking about it in your daily video series, then what else is going on in your life that you're hiding or keeping kind of secret? And if I'm going to bring people in I want to bring them in like all the way. Now there is stuff that you just kind of keep to yourself for sure, or your small group that you can really trust, like, but there is stuff when that many people are asking you, you might as well do a video about it.
How do you choose
like, and
those things that you keep private?
I think a lot of times it's stuff that people aren't asking me about. You know what I mean? Like, nobody knows it, so why talk about it, really? And if it's not going to clear my energy, if it's not going to make me a better person, if it's not going to help someone else, I used to all the time, like, battle with talking about, at one time I was facing 28 years in prison when I was in my 20s. And, I've been sober 23 years now. And there were times where people were like, man, you shouldn't be talking about that anymore. Like, people will judge you. How are you going to judge me on who I was in my 20s? I'm not even the same, like, person at all. Like, and I didn't go to jail. I was just charged with stuff that then they eventually dropped. That's how that stuff works. It works all the time. I just happened to be wrong place, wrong time with the wrong people. Got brought into a lot of that stuff. Some of the stuff, I had to cop to that I did do, but, ultimately I got sober out of it. So that was like, it's a great thing. And sometimes it does take, scared straight. Sometimes it does take getting locked up in, a gang ward and you're not a gangster and you're just like, hey, I'm not supposed to be here. I know what street I grew up on, but I ain't one of them. Let me go. And so I used to always be told, oh, don't talk about that. It's going to hurt your career. And I'm just like, what? Like, that would be like me showing up to like a interview wearing long sleeves, or, shaving my beard or something and being someone that I'm not. This is who I am. Accept me for who I am, because who I am is actually a really great guy. You know what I mean? And then when you start pushing that stuff down and hiding it, or even who you are, for me not to talk about being divorced 2 times, for me not to talk about having custody of my 4 kids and, just going through all that, why wouldn't I? You know what I mean? And so it kind of makes you who you are. There's no reason to hide it. But what I think is people can relate. Anytime I've done a talk, I talk about being sober, or I talk about, that, one time I was really going down the wrong path. I thought I was some tough guy, blah, blah, blah. After the talk, and I've done all this marketing and business talk, people come up to me, man, I've been really struggling with alcohol. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. It's so weird. Like, that's where they relate. They don't relate from the marketing stuff. They relate from the personal stuff.
Do people expect that you're going to give them a little too much of that emotional labor, though? Like, do people mistake your openness for access a little much, or no?
I used to be worried more that it was a weakness. It'd be looked at as being weak in a way, more than, I think that's just, kind of a little bit of, the upbringing.
Yeah. You don't want to show that you fucked up.
Yeah, what I don't like is when I do a video and maybe I'm vague and ambiguous about something, and someone will like message and be like, hey, when you were talking about this, what was that? And I was like, bro, if I wanted to talk about that, I would have talked about that.
Yeah, you're like, I don't owe you that information.
Like, it's funny, like, I'm that guy that, like, I understand social media to an extent. I'm no expert, but like on Facebook, if I change it from public to friends only, don't screen cap that shit and then you share it.
That's a
because
good
I would have
point.
made it public so you could share it if I wanted you to share it, just because I'm putting there with my friends. And it's like, that's like almost, there's little things within social that are kind of like saying, hey, you know what, let's just keep this in the room. And when I see that kind of stuff happen, I'll call those people out. I'll say, okay, we're obviously not friends anymore. You're not getting it. That's not why that doesn't have a share button. That doesn't have a share button because I don't want you to share it, but I don't mind telling you it, kind of a thing. And that's the one thing that just always trips me out, is when people want to get more insight. It's almost like you need to have a Patreon for your like really deep closet stuff, where people are like, ooh, I want to pay for that. I really want that content.
Or instead of a Patreon, just have that be your real life friends, which is how we used to do it. That's how it used to work.
It is, but I mean, that's what's really great. Social is really different on the road. Like, it's a different device for me than it is for most people, because most people still have their in-town friends that they, hey, you want to go grab a cup of coffee? Let's do that. I don't have that. So really the only way to stay connected with, family and friends outside of, because I just move every 2 weeks really, and it's like, that's just not enough time to establish a relationship and a friendship with someone in the town. I mean, I do. And then but guess what? Then I stay in touch with them via social media, or unless I come back to the same spot. So social media has been really great on the road in a different way than I experienced social media for the 10 years leading up to taking off on the road.
And how did you experience it before in terms of that shift?
Yeah, I feel like social media before was really just about kind of sharing the highs. You know what I mean? It wasn't really about it wasn't about relating and communicating and, kind of really being there for each other. And I feel like once I kind of left, I felt like, now I've got to share everything. And I do share too much, I think, based on what I see other people sharing. But I I love those DMs. I love I would never guess that you, Demian, are dealing with that. When I hear that first sentence, I'm like, oh shit. It's like, because if you, Demian, who seems like this big, funny, lovable, big guy that's traveling the world, is still having these moments, then of course I'm having these moments. And I'm like, yeah, well, if you're having those moments because you're human, it has nothing to do with big, bubbly traveling. It just has to do with you're human. But I like that it relates, because I think I'll go back to AA. When I was getting sober, I was in my 20s. Nobody's getting sober in their 20s. That's when everyone's starting to drink.
That's when they're getting unsober.
Right. I got unsober at 13. I had a good 13-year run from 13 to 26. Half of my life was
Again, you were ahead of the curve.
Way ahead of the curve. I was like, screw.
You're an innovator.
Yeah, without a doubt. I was an alcoholic influencer before there was such a thing.
Yep.
And so for me, when I would walk into these AA meetings, it's mostly 50 and older. And they've all gone through this like terrible kind of stuff. And so at one time I started going to this group and I just stayed, even though there was no one I could relate to. Well, a couple weeks later, 20-something walks in. A couple weeks after that, within like a couple weeks, there was like 10 or 15 20-somethings, because all it took was going to a place where you can actually be around someone that you can relate to. And I used to always make the joke too, like kind of the analogies with basketball. There was this one basketball court I'd always go to, and it'd always be empty. And people would drive up. I'd be there just shooting hoops by myself, just like therapy. Someone would drive up, hey, are they playing here? I'm like, they never really do. But within the hour that I was shooting, maybe 15, 20 guys drove by and asked if anyone was playing and left. And I'm like, if everyone would have got out, we'd be running a game right now.
Yeah.
Such a hurry to go to like where it's already. And I always remember that if everyone just would have got out and stayed, we'd end up playing. It's the same thing with the AA. If everyone just would have kept going to the group, when I walked in, I would have seen a 20-something, because there are people in their 20s getting sober.
Yeah.
I wasn't like ahead of the curve in that way. Just there was no one to see. I think about this lifestyle. When I decided to go full-time in an RV, this wasn't because of an Instagram post or a YouTube video. I didn't know people did this. I honestly, the first time I saw, wait, people do this? I thought I invented it. Like, literally had that moment. And what's funny is, as I've talked to other RVers, that happens a lot. People aren't looking at these people's van doors out by the lake and, it just looks beautiful and it's this Instagram #van life kind of thing. They've not been influenced at all. And they just decide to do it. And I'm really thankful that that's kind of my story, that it wasn't that I was like, ooh, I want to be like so-and-so. I just thought, I want to move out of California. This is a cool way to see the country. I think it's Texas, but what if it's not? It's still Texas. Texas still feels like home. And, but for me, it was just an interesting concept that I wasn't influenced really by anything to do it, except for, I will say that Fixer Up influenced me to get the hell out of California. You can buy a house for 50 grand, put 10 grand into it. I was done. I can't even fix my garage for 50 grand in California.
Oh my goodness. So one thing I do want to go back to is, you have mentioned how sometimes you almost share too much, and how people were really like, don't share this, don't share that, it'll make you unemployable, blah, blah, blah. Have you had any blowback? Or, because it sounds like, for the most part, you've been almost pleasantly surprised, or even not surprised, by the fact that it's really support and it's really making it okay for other people to acknowledge this stuff in themselves. But have you experienced that blowback at all, and how have you dealt with it?
Well, I mean, as an entrepreneur now, I don't deal with it really at all. There are times where now, as kind of the face of a brand, I have to be really careful in what I say. And that's where it's really important why I switch a lot of things to friends only, because I know my friends get me. I had asked a question just out loud on Facebook a while back, and there were a lot of people that were kind of offended by it. But
really?
Then I also learned that people, I want to be careful.
Yeah, this is like, anyone could be watching, so I understand.
Yeah. So it was just basically like, I couldn't believe that this was happening within this one religion sect, that I have friends, in this religion sect. Like, it wasn't like I was naive and ambiguous to it. I understood it. I was just like, it didn't make sense to me. And when I've talked positive, they're not commenting, hey, thanks for being positive about this. But once I asked a question that was somewhat negative, people kind of lost their mind. And I had someone that I just recently connected to that was in the full-time lifestyle, and his response was kind of like, not a good look for someone that's publishing a magazine about this life to attack a certain religion. I was like, one, I didn't attack the religion. No. I asked a question. Like, it didn't make sense to me. Like, why can't I ask how this is okay. So the example I guess I can give you is people talk shit about California all the time in this lifestyle. It's never bothered me, not once, but I could say something about a state. There's a state that's number 50 in my list. I'll never tell you what the state is, but there is. I kind of almost talked about it once and people lost their mind. And I'm like, you guys, unless you have that state tattoo on you somewhere, and I don't. I mean, I was in California for 40 years. I have all kinds of tattoos. I don't have a California tattoo. And that's where I was like, oh, this is that kind of stuff. Me sharing my kind of past and my history, I don't think it's really had blowback. I feel like
great.
Yeah, it hasn't. When I've worked for people, I think they have a little concern about it. I've worked for people that if for some reason they could see my interaction with people, they'd be like, hey, I don't know why you're talking like that. And I'm like, I'm talking to my black friend that I grew up with in my all black neighborhood to the all black high school that I went to that way. And he's saying, Demian, you're not white, you're black, because that's the way they see me. So you've only known me for a year. You're talking about people I've known for 25 years, and I'm going to interact with them in a different way than you would. And that had some blowback, which was weird, where I was like, you can't have an opinion on my personal. It would be almost like if your boss was in a Starbucks and you and some friends are talking and they're overhearing it and being like, hey, we need to talk on Monday.
You're a representative of our company at all times.
Yeah, and it's like, but I'm being a great representative because those are my people. Those are my friends. Like, what are you talking about? It's the weirdest thing.
So it's interesting. It sounds like there was sort of an anticipation on other people's part, not on your part, but on other people's part. There might be this sort of anticipation that you might get blowback on certain things. But not only do you not fear that, you haven't really experienced, the fear hasn't really come to pass. It seems like the only things you've gotten blowback on have been stuff relating to other people that has nothing to do with you sharing the dark parts of yourself.
Well, also, too, I mean, we're talking about some of the stuff I talk about is 96, 97, and before.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
But you've talked about stuff when you've gone through it currently, too. I've seen you talk about going through mental hard times.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like, I talked about where, like, I literally thought I had, like, a nervous breakdown, and I talked about it a little, and, again, it's
about
like,
it. That was huge.
Yeah, and it's like, is that a reflection on where you're working, what you're doing, and that kind of stuff? And it got like where people were like, is it because of work? You know what I mean? And it was like, yeah, like that's part of it. Part of it is you get sad, you get upset, and and I think the work wanted it. No, you need to be like where you're really happy at all times. And that was like, work isn't your definition of happiness. I mean, it should be. You should be really happy in your work, but it's not what drives your kind of language and your motivation in a way. So it was just weird.
Yeah. So you mentioned before that now your conversational sort of standards may be shifting slightly because you are building a brand. You are an entrepreneur. So let's kind of sort of wrap up by talking about that. I'd love for you to share what you built and why that's what you built, and how your relationship with social media is shifting slightly for that.
Yeah, so in 2016, when I thought I invented going full-time in an RV, and then quickly realized I did not, and saw all the YouTube channels and all the blogs about it, I thought to myself...
there were way fewer.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. There is definitely a culture now of buy van, buy RV, buy camera, without a doubt. There really is. Everyone's doing it now. And I looked for a magazine. There wasn't a magazine. And I thought, that's odd that there's, 1 million people doing this in the country, and there's not like a publication talking about the 1 million people doing it. So then I basically kind of put that on hold, put it in the back burner, because I didn't have any experience. I mean, I had experience in running magazines, but I didn't have any experience in running this life. And so after, getting let go, I originally was kind of thinking about doing something in and around the lifestyle, but I had to be careful because at the time where I was working, they thought I was living a vacation life. And maybe that'll help with some context is I was going to lapse some vacation days. And I asked my employer at the time, hey, I've got 9 more vacation days. Can I take the next 9 Fridays off? Because Fridays were kind of slow for us anyways. And then I have a 3-day weekend. It allows me to move on a Friday as opposed to a Saturday, which isn't the best day to move, blah, blah, blah. And the response was, well, it's kind of like you're on vacation anyways right now. And that's like telling someone that lives in Hawaii they're on vacation. You know what I mean? Like, that's not That's not what that's about. And so for me, instantly I was like, okay, this is the wrong kind of gig, and it's the wrong message about the lifestyle, that if you're living in an RV, you're not on vacation. I get that people go on vacation in RVs as much as people go to Hawaii for a vacation. So there was that aspect of it. And so when 2019 came around and we started talking about, hey, let's look to launch this and stuff, I still was very much thinking I need to be in print. Like, that was my mindset. My background is print magazine.
That was an interesting thought to have in 2019.
Yeah, well, I mean, it in the sense that magazines still are really heavily print as opposed to digital, and even with the digital nomad. So then I thought, well, let me just put some feelers out there and see if digital would really. And I was very surprised that it clicks, that it makes sense, but until you ask someone and talk to people. But I was very surprised that print was such a big issue for people, that they wanted to receive it. So we did like a little Kickstarter.
How do people on the road know where to have it sent? Like, do you have to change up people's subscriptions every month? Like, give them a heads up?
No. So that's one of those kind of questions that's kind of funny to me.
From someone who doesn't understand the life, I know.
Yeah, I just have a P.O. box that'll then put all my mail in a box and mail it to me wherever I'm at.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, it's we're not breaking news in the magazine, you know what I mean? It's evergreen type stuff, and that's the way it should be, especially in and around a lifestyle. Trying to break the news on something, you can't do that every other month. You really can't even do it if you're doing weekly. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got to be doing something daily to be kind of a news thing. So decided just to kind of really embrace the lifestyle and go all into it. One day was sitting writing names, thought of a name but wasn't available. Thought, okay, well, I really want to find something that's available. Found the name Rootless, which I really liked just because it was kind of a play on Ruthless, the idea of just not being stuck, and just kind of went with that. And, you know, we basically really, like in November of 2019 is when we put it out there, and our first issue was January 2020. And it went really quick from the time where we finally made the commitment to say, okay, we're going to do it, to then actually launching it, which is good. I mean, a lot of times I sit around for years with ideas, don't do anything with them, or, you know, I take way too long and then finally launch it. I wish I would have launched it. You know, I got fired in October of 2018. I wish I would have launched it January of 2019. I could have done it that quick too, and that would have been amazing to have that whole year under my belt rather than thinking and worrying and trying to figure it out.
Well, that's great. So basically, is your communication sort of shifting now from being more about you and your experiences and your life thoughts and stuff to being more about the lifestyle that you're part of?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to talk more. I think my highs and lows will be about the life. I think the content will be about the life. And, you know, one of the things is I keep kind of a running dialogue of the things I've talked about in the videos. And I've looked and I've talked about, you know, like I'll use the example micro and macro. I've had this conversation about, you know, these comparisons. I've done it a lot. And I keep saying to myself, well, I'm going to save this content for when I start like a Rootless YouTube channel. And then I'm like, no, I really should, you know, use it as more of the side effect would be a promotional tool. It's not the majority of the idea is being a promotional tool, because it's not. I mean, I was able to launch this magazine because of the Road to 300 series and the relationships and things like that, and then people that have found me because of the lifestyle. But I thought, what if I just really dove deep? But I also want to start playing with YouTube. I want to be I haven't really done a lot in and around trying to grow a channel. I think if I really niche it down and bring in my consistency factor with a niche, it'll be interesting to see if you really can grow a channel in 2020. And so it'll be fun for me to play with that. And I've made it a really relaxed hobby. You know, originally this was going to be on Instagram. They're going to be under-minute videos, just be on Instagram, nowhere else. And I thought, no, I want to be able to find this years later. I want grandkids to be able to find this. And I don't even have grandkids yet, you know, kind of a thinking. And so I think that's where my shift will be, is more about the everyday stuff that I deal with, which a lot of it obviously has to do with RVing.
I love that. Awesome. Yeah. Well, it has been great to see your journey and to continue to see your journey. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so for me, it's everything at Demian Ross. It's spelled kind of funky, Demian, then Ross. I mean, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I don't even really why I mentioned Twitter. I don't do it enough, and I need to. But Instagram's probably, and obviously YouTube. Mm-hmm. But for the magazine, you can just go to rootlessliving.com. It's a free subscription. No credit card, no nothing. It'll just come into your email box, and you get to read it. And we do 6 issues a year. Maybe we email 9 times a year. Like, we're not doing anything with your email address. All you're going to get are the issues. If you want to learn more about, kind of living a little bit more freer, and I want to make sure that people understand that Rootless isn't about, I would have called it full-time RVer if that's what it was all about. It's really about just not being in a situation where you're stuck. Obviously, a lot of what has to do with is being an RV because it makes it easy not to be stuck. But there are people that travel out of a suitcase, plane, boats, Airbnb to Airbnb, in a motorcycle, tent to tent. There's just interesting ways that people still live their digital nomadic lifestyle, still earning a living. This isn't like a retired publication. And it's just been a ton of fun. And so I wanted to give it a name that, I had some fun play, and I didn't pigeonhole myself in case something came out that was better than an RV down the road.
Awesome. Well, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Demian, for sharing your story, for sharing your experiences, not only here, but also as part of your Road to 1000 videos always. Very excited to check out how that journey continues with Rootless. Again, I do this show every single week, and next week I am going to close out Mental Health Month by talking with Amber Naslund. She actually works for LinkedIn, but she is developing her own project all about imposter syndrome. It's called the Fraud Squad, and we're going to talk about imposter syndrome and how, it's something a lot of us deal with, and so she has actually really made a study of it. So we're going to talk about that next week. Bye!